We're just gonna dive right into it.
That's right. Yeah. All right. Well, hello and welcome to the OnStage Colorado Podcast. I'm Alex Miller, and I'm here again with arts reporter Toni Tresca. Hey, Toni, how's it going?
Good morning, Alex. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Oh, yeah. It's Sunday, May 26th as we record this. So it's Memorial Day weekend, and everybody's... it always seems like in Colorado, there's Memorial Day weekends often accompanied by like terrible weather, but I think this year's the exception. A lot of times the people are getting snowed on up in the campsites in the mountains, and but it's really pretty nice here, so people should be out and about.
A little bit of rain yesterday, Saturday, as I was driving up to Fort Collins to see Waiting for Godot over at the Boz Blue Theater. But that was just in the afternoon, and by that evening, it was absolutely lovely. I sat outside, had some dinner at the I think it's called the Soda Counter over in Fort Collins or something there, the Soda Bar or something. It was a great little spot. And just I had a great time over at that theater company as well, which we can get into a little bit later. But.
Yeah, so Bob Blue is a great little theater company, and Fort Collins is such a great town. It's too bad it's such a pain in the ass to get up there, because I don't know if they'll ever finish construction on I-25, but at least of course for people who don't live there, of which many people do. So, but yeah, it's a great town. It's a great foodie town. There's lots of great restaurants up there and stuff like that. So,
and the downtown is super fun and cute. There's a lot of I was watching people do, I guess they're like bar crawls that happen all around the downtown Fort Collins area. Because like the doors were just open and people were just like popping in and out. It was crazy.
Yeah, great town. As someone who lives in Highlands Ranch, which has no downtown, I'm always really envious of towns that have really cool downtowns. And Fort Collins is definitely one of them. So, well, as usual, I'll take a look at some of the latest shows that we've seen or reviewed and go through, look at our weekly list of Colorado headliners, shows of particular interests that you should try to catch. I think ours might be a little shorter than usual this week because we've covered quite a few in the last couple of episodes, but we definitely have some things we want to call out. And then later in the podcast, my interview with Naomi Grossman. So this is a Fringe Festival performer who'll be here for the Denver Fringe Festival, June 6th through 9th, with her show American Horror Story, based on her experience playing a really frightening character in American Horror Story, and a bunch of other things about her life. So it's a great conversation with her. So stick around for that. And one of the things that we were just talking about this morning is so John Moore, if you don't know, he's a longtime arts journalist and former Denver Post theater critic who writes for the Denver Gazette now, and he's written quite a bit about the dearth of arts journalism in around Colorado and everywhere else, and he makes a lot of interesting points. But he had a story in today's Denver Gazette that Toni, you pointed out to me that called out both of us and mentioned OnStage Colorado, and so we wanted to just touch on that a little bit. And what was your initial reaction to John's story?
So I got texted it by a friend this morning who was like, "Your name's in the news. Do you know that?" I was like, "That's a very intense way to phrase this." I thought it was John's story about art entitled "Arts Without Journalism is Like a Tree Falling Center Stage." Kind of just talking about the Colorado Business Committee for the Arts had asked him to lead a discussion on the overall state of arts journalism in Colorado. And he kind of used this as a chance to kind of respond and break that down, talk about not only the decline of arts and culture journalism in Colorado, which he definitely points to, gives numerous examples, such as the shrinking of the staff on the Denver Post, which he left a number of years ago, as well as just the over 3,000 journalism jobs that were lost overall in 2023. So kind of a high-level view of the journalism industry in decline, as well as a very specific look at the decline in Colorado. So that immediately took my attention. That's kind of the first half of the story, is kind of breaking it down, and then kind of setting up where we are now is kind of the second half of the story, in which he kind of breaks down. He's covering all of the arts over at the Gazette. John Wenzel is covering all of the arts over at the Post, and Eden Lane is kind of covering all of the arts over at Colorado Public Radio. And then kind of hits into then he kind of brings us into the conversation.
Yeah, so and so he wrote, attempting to fill the vacuum are a host of citizen champions and cheerleaders in the form of self-appointed bloggers who are not compensated for the work and have no incentive to maintain a high critical bar. Boo, I don't believe that, John. I wish you would believe that just about every theater production out there is better than Broadway, and for sure there are definitely some that do that. But and then he does say that OnStage Colorado is the most influential online platform to emerge in our local theater community over the past few years, which is nice to say. But he goes on to say that the inherent problem with an organic startup site like ours, with no independent funding or advertising revenue, is that its primary readership is not the general theater going public, but the actual companies they cover, which incentivize them to err on the positive side and blurs the line between journalism and boosterism. And no one is paid for their work. One can only wonder how sustainable this vigorous love letter to the local theater community can be in the long run. So, a couple of things to say about that. For one, I think the time for lamenting the past is over. And I think a lot of
interesting.
Wailing about the decline of journalism in general is certainly entertaining for journalists, but I think there's a lot of places that are just moving forward and say, well, if the old advertising sustained model for newspapers or whatever is not working, except for very few large newspapers like the New York Times, Washington Post,
although the New York Times is not really even a newspaper business anymore. It's primarily a gaming business that also does news on the side. I mean, you laugh, but in their company reports that they release, this is all public information that they've released to the public, it is primarily, they are not supported by ads anymore or by their newspaper industry. They are supported by people playing those games. So I think it's interesting that one of your big examples of success in the news industry is not really even a news business anymore.
Yeah, well, I would push back on a little bit. I do think that the New York Times is still gets a decent amount of advertising revenue from, but they are and they are big. People are into the games and stuff, but anyway, but the thing about what I was just trying to say is that there's different models coming out, like nonprofit newsrooms. There's these different, there's like, look at the Colorado Sun and kind of the model that they have, and ProPublica and all these different news sites that are finding other ways, and it's not like they're rolling in dough or getting rich, but they're some of them are making it sustainable. And so you and I have talked about this. It's like, well, what is the model for non-news journalism? So arts journalism being a big subset of that, I would say. And so, you and I have talked about the future of OnStage Colorado and what it can be, what it can evolve into, and so, it's not, we are generating some revenue. We are starting to get some support from theaters in the state that want to, advertise on our site and support what we're doing. And there, we do have a plan to make it sustainable. And I think that, we've talked about how this could be like a model for other places, but just in Colorado, it'd be like, once you've got some revenue, you can start paying writers. You can attract professional writers more than just volunteers, and also, be able to create something that is a win-win. So, these theater companies and other performing arts organizations are getting their shows covered. Some of these journalists are getting paid, a decent amount to do it. And so you've moved on past, wailing about the past, and, it's a long-term, we're talking about like a 5-year plan, and, but it's something to think about.
Yeah, I think that is the kind of piece I texted John this morning about this story, and that was one of the pieces I mentioned to him. Is I would be specifically interested in hearing a little bit more about what the Colorado Business Committee for the Arts or other organizations such as the Bonfil Staton Foundation would be interested in doing to actually invest in arts and culture funding and support, because they mentioned the leaders in the piece that he talked to mentioned that they're very supportive of that and they're quite interested in doing that, but they don't actually point to any investments aside from business leaders should invest in organizations that support this. And hire arts journalists. But there really are, as John noted, very few organizations who are doing that. So
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a great point. It's like, if you want coverage of the arts, maybe you need to think beyond what happened in the past and think about, like, well, if we have funding for arts organizations, maybe we should think about funding arts journalism at the same time in some capacity. And I know it's a hard thing to think about, but it's worth looking into.
absolutely. And I mean, John kind of points out that in the piece that I've kind of broken the model of how the freelance business and industry used to formerly work, noting Tresca has completely rewritten the long entrenched rules of freelance, which for decades dictated that freelancers wrote exclusively for one media outlet for pennies per word. But now kind of ... features in multiple outlets that are eagerly publishing, which is true. I didn't realize at the time that was a norm that I was breaking.
You're a mold breaker, Tony.
I honestly, John told me that one time. I think it was at a Wonderbound show, and I was like, "Really? I honestly had no idea." And John's like, "Yeah, I was talking to my editors about it, and they're like, how is this even possible?" But I guess if you don't know the rules, it's easier.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's easier to break them.
Tony's just like, hey, I need work here. So whoever's willing to pay me
that is quite literally what happened. I literally just sent out emails to, it was about 40, 50 different editors all around the state. And I just was like, I'm game. I'm open for business.
You found 40 editors?
I did. I truly did. I created like a master list. This was back in 2022. I didn't get responses from all of them. Some of the outlets were defunct. I realized afterwards. I got some rejection emails. So not all of them were live, but I did that initially. So
right.
Yeah, I wonder what we can do to support, because it's not only me who's doing this. There are other arts and culture freelance writers out there, like Juliana Auclair is another great one, who is now kind of over in an internship position at the Post, but freelances around in the arts and culture industry a lot as well. There are a number of other freelance writers out there who are kind of trying to do this, and as John notes, it's pretty difficult because you're kind of competing. You're kind of trying to navigate all these different relationships with editors. The pay I've negotiated what I found out is maybe better, but it's still not amazing. You don't have any health insurance benefits. It's still a lot of travel to kind of get around. So
yeah,
there are a lot of people who are interested in doing the work, and I think the work does absolutely need to be done. So my overall kind of question after reading that piece was just like, how do we get there? If this is an issue that the community is seriously interested in, what does that investment look like? Because I think it looks a little bit more like just being like, this is a problem, and it looks like monetary investment, and that's a little bit more challenging to get to than just talking about it, but I think that's where we've got to be.
Right. Yeah. And I think there's also, thinking about like, well, how do we encourage people to, so John sort of has a dim view of what he calls self-appointed bloggers, or people who, who don't come out of academic background of theater or something like that. Or like, what is his idea of who's qualified to write about theater might be a little outdated, I think. You and I certainly know a fair amount about theater, but I mean, I also think that there's a lot of value in having people who offer opinions about shows, maybe not from that perspective of the on-high academic who knows everything about Pinter and and Shakespeare and everything, to say like,
sure,
hey, you want people of all kinds to go into theaters, not just people who are literary, super literary minded. You want them to go in and see things and get an idea from a different perspective on what this show is going to be like and how they might enjoy it.
Absolutely, because diversity includes diversity of viewpoints and thoughts as well. And I think, how do we encourage that as well within the next kind of level of arts ecosystem and journalism moving forward? Because you want to have those different perspectives contributing and talking about it. This is kind of nodding back to a conversation we had 2 weeks ago about our continuation of theater criticism, but you kind of do want different kind of audiences to be serviced in reviews. That's kind of, that's what I enjoy about reading other reviewers is I don't always agree with the people whom I read. Like, for instance, Lisa Kennedy, who he also mentions in the piece, who freelances for the Post as well as a number of other national outlets. I don't always agree with her, but I always enjoy reading her perspectives because she kind of she has a very distinct point of view and what she looks for in art. And I don't always we often kind of disagree on different things, but that's the beauty, I think, of good criticism. So how do we create an environment that fosters that?
Sure.
Supports those different viewpoints and ideas.
Yeah, and one other thing I would say is that, yes, not everybody emerges from the womb as a theater critic, thankfully. But it really helps to have someone who's kind of has some background, like as an editor. I mean, I work with a lot of these volunteer reviewers to improve what they're doing, and I have worked on a style guide, that helps. Well, I walk through what do you want to have in a review? What should be in it? It's not just like boosterism. It's not just describing the plot. And we've talked about this before. So, having the, some sort of a hub, an editor, and this is my own bias. I believe editors are very important, especially in a time when there's just, there's just not a lot of editors out there. It's just the stream of stuff. And I think that a curated site is important.
Yeah, I totally agree. I also think it just holds people more accountable when there are different tiers. There's more of a process. That different people are kind of screening it. And I think it also just, as a writer, I also enjoy having an editor because I feel like that relationship going back and forth strengthens the pieces as well as just gives me more support if I am potentially diving into a dicier area.
Yeah. And that's an interesting topic that I won't get into now, but like the editors, I mean, there's plenty of writers around. Editors are a little harder to find. And it takes a while to become, a good editor. And if you've got fewer journalists kicking around, you're going to have fewer editors because, that's usually the pipeline. People start out as journalists or something and become editors. And, but editors of all kinds, and we're sort of, we've kind of gotten used to the unfiltered state of online opinion, whether it's people on Amazon talking about, some widget with 1,000 reviews about, I don't know, a bracket or something, which I always find amazing. It's like, who are these people? And maybe they're not people at all. Maybe they're all just bots or something. I don't know. So anyway, well, John, thanks for that, prompting us with that story. I do think perhaps the next one you can do is look a little more forward looking and think about what can be done about it rather than thinking about what's not working. And certainly we're hoping that OnStage Colorado is part of the solution.
Absolutely. And I do also think there is there's definitely value in what John is doing here because you can't solve the problem you're not willing to admit there is a problem. And I think perhaps for a lot of people, maybe who aren't as deeply invested in it as us, they may not realize quite how bad the state of the industry is or quite why the arts aren't being covered the same way that they once were. They just maybe realize that they're not hearing about stuff as much. They don't know as much what's going on. I mean, that's what I realized when I first came to Colorado. That's why I got into it, was because I wanted to know what was going on in the community, and I was having a really tricky time finding that information. So yeah, I got involved, but I can definitely see why this has a ton of value for folks who are just maybe more on the outside kind of looking in.
Yeah. Oh, and I just had one other thing I wanted to respond to is that the assertion that it's mostly theater companies that are reading our site, and it's just not true. And certainly plenty do, but I look at the metrics pretty carefully of our site, and I know that we've got people from people find our site in all kinds of ways, searching for a theater in Colorado, and also because we have a theater calendar that pretty much has pretty much all the shows in the state. That's how a lot of people find the site, and they're looking for shows. So.
Hey, according to the Denver Reddit section, OnStage Colorado has the most extensive theater calendar in the state. I know that Reddit carries some weight for some people, so take that what you will. I was just scrolling through there was an interesting maybe another conversation for another day, but there was an interesting thread on the Denver subreddit recently about the theater scene in the Denver area, and OnStage Colorado came up a number of times on that thread. So.
Oh, good to know. I still don't really look at Reddit. I don't completely understand it. I think it's interesting. It's just kind of like this wall where people just splatter stuff on it.
It's a really interesting curation thing. I definitely use it for like recommendations as well, because I kind of find it's more human nowadays than Yelp or Google reviews, which have just kind of been overcome and like with spam bots.
Yeah.
So I thought this was interesting. So people are interested, we can maybe link this Reddit thread below.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I know another thing we wanted to talk about is immersive theater in Colorado. And so this was an idea you threw out, and it's an interesting thing because it does seem like immersive theater is growing in Colorado, and there's more companies that are kind of dedicated exclusively to it, like Catamounts or Audacious Theatre. The Denver Center's off-center arm is pretty much all about not always immersive, but generally, I would say. So what's your thought about like why? Well, what is immersive? What does that mean to the average person, do you think?
So immersive, I guess most simply, is the kind of theater practice of creating a world around attendees that make you feel either a part of the action or you are actually inside the action influencing it. So even right there, you notice I've just named two different kind of styles of immersive art.
Right.
And that kind of hints that there are a ton of different like offshoots of this, such as like I didn't even realize how extensive the world was until my recent conversation with Lonnie Hansen, who is a kind of a pioneer of immersive art and visual art installations here in Denver specifically. He was kind of talking about all these different kinds. There's like also the dark ride immersive kind of experience, which is more like what he describes as like a Disneyland ride, in which you have little scenes that people kind of walk around and go to that kind of come alive, versus more interactive immersive, in which you are actually kind of engaging with the story and influencing it. And so because there are all these different definitions, it can kind of sometimes be a little bit of muddy about what exactly immersive is. And exactly to trace the rise of it, because some people point to. I read this really interesting article over in 303 magazine called "How and Why Immersive Experiences Are Taking Over the Denver Art Scene." This was written in 2020, so this is 4 years ago. And this article actually even traces the rise all the way back to like 2007. So they even point even earlier as to like where the roots were, which would definitely make sense because there were artists such as Lonnie Hansen, like I just mentioned, who had kind of been doing this work and were very, very invested in it. So yeah, there are just a ton of, they point to, this article also points to like places like Casa Bonita and being very influential in kind of making space for that. And kind of in Denver to arise, because it was and I'm quoting here, a driving force for over 45 years, because it's kitschy people, but because it's kitschy, people tend to overlook it. So kind of being like, Casa Bonita kind of deserves a little bit more respect in making way for the Meow Wolves that would come now in present day, that would kind of boom and lead to Denver now hosts the immersive conferences for the United States. The Denver Center just hosted Immersive in November 2023. That was this national convening of performance art organizations and immersive producers, creators, and industry professionals for 3 days here in Denver. So just kind of taking them around all of the different offerings, everything from the off center, like you just mentioned, also stuff by like Control Group and other different places here around the state, and showcasing stuff from around the country. So it really has become a hot belly for creation, but a hot belly for, I like it. Is that right? Did I use that word right?
I don't know. I like hot belly though.
Hot belly for immersive creation here, but I thought it was really interesting that this writer, I want to give them credit, Corrine Anderson, kind of traced and pointed to the roots that had been brewing here in Denver for decades ahead of where we are now.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, so it didn't always used to be called immersive, but this kind of art has been around for a long time, from the magician hauling somebody up on stage at its most basic, perhaps, to, an actual thing like theater of the mind, that Off Center did, this David Byrne inspired production where, you're really part of the action, to, Audacious Theatre. So we recently went to their, Space Conflicts show, which I guess that was a little bit more staged, even though the audience was definitely part of the action. But a lot of times, an immersive thing, it doesn't have much in the way of a script, or it's just got kind of a, more of an outline. And I was going to just ask you, like, what is that kind of a show? What kind of need does that show fill that you think maybe traditional theater isn't meeting? Why are people kind of gravitating towards this type of experience?
But I think immersive really kind of is catering to the audience member who is kind of craving connection in their experience. I think so much of the world, particularly as technology has become an even more ever-present role in our lives, are kind of looking for ways to engage and connect with the world around them. And I think immersive theater gives you a really tangible way to not only see an arts experience, but also really engage with it. And usually I have found from my attendance at immersive experiences, also engage with the other attendees around you, because it's kind of impossible not to talk to the other folks who you're kind of in this experience with. Or at least I've found. Maybe that's just because I'm a chatty Cathy, but I don't know. I think that's kind of the niche that immersive theater is catering to.
Yeah, and I think if you're not necessarily a dyed-in-the-wool theater goer, you might find immersive a little bit more I don't know, accessible than going in and filing in and taking your chair, and the lights dim and the curtain comes back, and that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
I could see it appealing to maybe younger people, who are looking for a different kind of experience, especially if you're stuck in, like somebody. I don't know, maybe this is a stereotype, but I mean, a lot of younger people are sitting watching, playing games on screens, and being able to get out and see real people. And so. And I also think it's interesting if you think about some of the ways that people scratch that gregarious itch, or whatever it is, about being human and being around other people. It might be, if you're in a little town in Ireland, maybe you go down to the pub every night, and your friends are down there, and a lot of that, there used to be a lot of fraternal organizations that, a lot of people would go to, especially men back in the day, you go to the Elks or whatever. You had this, whether it's your bar, your organization, your volunteer organization, there's places that people are looking to make connections. And I think immersive theater kind of, is part of that landscape as well.
Yeah, I think it really is a different way to engage audience members, like you're saying. And I think it's also interesting. I see some experiences like the recent Empire Strips Back, which is arguably immersive theater. It doesn't really market itself as immersive theater, because I think it kind of just uses I used words like interactive experience or things like that. So I think and I think another kind of example of this is and this was also pointed to in that 303 magazine article, was kind of haunted houses roles in this every year, and their kind of influence, and the kind of they specifically pointed to the 13th floor haunted house experience as kind of increasing people's willingness to engage in these sensory experiences. And so I think that's another definite thing. Like sometimes people within the immersive community get a little touchy when I talk about haunted houses, but I absolutely think haunted houses are definitely a fit in the realm of immersive theater experiences.
Yeah, definitely. Probably a little less on the scripted side, more of the gimmick side, but that's often part of an immersive experience. So, all right. Well, and also speaking again about Fringe Festival, some of that stuff coming up, I think, has some immersive elements as well. So definitely, if you want to check out something on kind of a smaller scale, shorter show, you might check and see what's on the Fringe lineup that has some of those on it. And of course, one of the big ones coming up is Darkfield, which we talked about. This is a Denver Off Center thing, which is another like a black, being in the dark experience. That's I think it's kind of more of a touring type thing. It's like an installation, but definitely in that realm. So another opportunity to check something like that out. So
You mentioned the Fringe Festival. There are 14 immersive offerings at the Fringe Festival this year. So
look at you with the empirical data.
I've got you, Alex. I got
Thank
you here with the hard numbers here. Yeah, 14 immersive offerings coming to Denver. So that's a very low cost way to, if you are immersive curious, dip your toes in the water. Another one I think that you just went to, and I'm going to later today, is Impossible Things, which is by the Catamounts, who we mentioned a little bit earlier. Their kind of immersive experience with Lonnie Hansen over at the Museum of Outdoor Arts.
Yes, and I will be at that today too, so I guess I will see you there.
Oh my gosh, I thought you went last night. This is amazing. I'm finding out live. We'll see each other later today.
Oh my God. Yeah, last night I was at Colored Wata at Curious. So,
great
cool,
production as well.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, speaking of Fringe, we'll be talking with Naomi Grossman, whose one-woman show, American Horror Story, is coming up at Fringe. Fun interview with her. And we'll look at some of our Colorado headliners, upcoming shows that you might want to think about getting out to see. So hang on. We'll be right back. The OnStage Colorado podcast is sponsored by Town Hall Arts Center, whose production of The Prom opens May 24th. Big city stars set themselves on a collision course with small-town PTA politicians in this sequin-covered musical comedy. Get tickets at townhallartscenter.org. We also receive support from Upstart Moves Theatre in Ouray, whose new production of Good People opens May 31st. The action takes place in the Southie area of Boston, where Margie has just been fired again. Get an old boyfriend, maybe offer some hope? Tickets and info at upstartmoves.org. OnStage Colorado is supported by the Colorado Springs Fine Arts Center at Colorado College, whose production of Rent plays through June 2nd at the Main Stage Theater. Tickets at fac.coloradocollege.edu. And OnStage Colorado is brought to you by the Boulder Ensemble Theater Company, Betsy, whose upcoming season includes Henrik Ibsen's Enemy of the People and Louisa May Alcott's Little Women and plenty more. Tickets at betsy.org. All right, I'm Alex Miller back here with the OnStage Colorado podcast with Toni Tresca. And so, Toni, we've been doing this Colorado headliners thing. We were kind of picking a top 10. I'm not sure if we can quite get to 10 this week, just because the last two episodes, we touched on a lot of great shows coming up. So in the interest of not repeating ourselves, we won't go over those again. But you've got a little bit of a list. So you want to talk about some of the things that you're looking forward to seeing, or at least wishing if you had a helicopter, you would maybe get to see all of them.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm going to start out with a couple of summer theater festivals, which are kicking off either this previous weekend or this upcoming weekend. So my first headliner is Creede Repertory Theatre, which just kicked off its season on May 25th. This is in the tiny town of Creede, which, according to the as described by Kate Berry, who is the interim artistic director and marketing director over there, it's about 5 hours from the Denver airport and 70 minutes from the closest Walmart. So it's a very remote little area over there. And this season, their lineup features Baskerville, a Sherlock Holmes mystery, Young Frankenstein, The Importance of Being Earnest, Primus Guide to Funerals, a summer concert series, Boomtown Improv, Maxim Conflict, and Coyote and the Counting Game. So if you can't find something within their lineup, I don't know, you're really not looking hard enough, because they've got a whole bunch of options there.
Yep. Creed's awesome.
Have you ever been to Creede?
I did. Yeah, I went a few years ago, and I did spent a couple of nights there and saw pretty much all of the shows in the Boomtown improv show. And it is really a great experience to do when you get a chance. And I'm hoping to, I don't know if I'll get there this summer, but I hope to do that again, because it's neat.
I'd love to kind of get out there this summer. The lineup to me looks really exciting. Particularly, I've never seen Young Frankenstein before. I'm a big Mel Brooks fan, and Amanda Berg Wilson is directing that, so I might try to get there, as well as the Primus Guide to Funeral is a world premiere down over there. So by the writer of the recent Cebollas over at the Denver Center. So They make a very intriguing case to make the drive to Creede.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful drive. So, all right. Well, what else have you got on your list, Tony?
Next summer festival also that is kicking off on May 31st is the Mountain Repertory Theatre. So this is in Grand Lake, Colorado, which is also a bit of a drive for those Denver folks, but they've got a season full of vibrant musicals, including Kinky Boots, The Music Man, Come From Away, Cabaret, and I Left My Heart, a salute to the music of Tony Bennett. And that season runs through September 28th over in Grand Lake, which is another one I've not personally been to, but my conversation with Michael Chiaro, who is one of the leaders over there, just made the festival sound incredible. Like, the economic impact that this festival has on the town of Grand Lake is so impressive. And their season, you can tell why. It's because their season is so expertly curated to appeal to not just tourist families and as well as local Coloradans, as he described it. So, and I mean, when you've got stuff like Kinky Boots and Come From Away and Cabaret all on your season, I mean, it's a really interesting lineup with also like some more safer picks, like he mentioned, like The Music Man, which is going to bring in a big audience just because people know the name.
Yep. I was just going to mention a couple of things that I noticed on the Arvada Center website, which is kind of, they do a little bit more in the summer because they've got that great venue out back there. So they've got in June, they've got Third Law Dance Theater is doing a show there on June 1st. And then the Denver Gay Men's Chorus has another show, has a show on June 13th. There. And then June 21st is an interesting show because it's Spin Doctors, which is like this band from the 90s that I would say kind of widely derided in a lot of ways. But I'm more excited about the opener is Cracker, which is one of my favorite old 90s bands. So I might go out and see that one. And then they've got Denver Brass coming up, and they've got a Mozart Under the Moonlight. So a bunch of stuff to check out at Arvada Center this summer as well. So definitely take a look on there at arvadacenter.org to see what they've got going on there.
I've got two more festivals that are also opening soon. So next up is the Little Theater of the Rockies. So this is over in Greeley, in UNC's campus there, the Norton Theater. And their season kicks off June 6th with Almost Heaven, the John Denver musical. That's going to be directed by Kenny Moten, acclaimed regional director up there. Then followed by Every Brilliant Thing, and then A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder. So their season is running through July 28th. Check out their website for more specific dates, as the kind of season is kind of siloed, with Almost Heaven opening first, then Every Brilliant Things, then Gentleman's Guide. They're not overlapping in any way. So if you're interested in seeing any of those, make sure you actually check when the dates are, because they're not playing that whole time through. So.
All right. What else?
The final summer festival that's opening soon is the Colorado Shakespeare Festival. So this is running June 8th through August 11th. This is the scaled down Shakespeare Festival. It's at the inside this year, and because of renovations on the Mary Rippon outdoors, but they're still presenting two full-length productions, Macbeth and the Merry Wives of Windsor, as well as an original practice production of the Arden of Faversham. So
I just bought a ticket to that to see, because I've never seen one of these original practices, one where they do the show kind of as it would have been done back in the day. And I will tell you right now, there were only a couple of seats left in the balcony. So if you want to see that one, you got to get on that pretty quick.
Well, yeah, hop on that. I know that the original practices, because I believe it's only one performance.
I think there's two.
They always sell out. Yeah. Okay, they have two performances. They always sell out. So yeah, definitely get those tickets.
Yep. And then some big comedians coming to town too.
Absolutely, yeah. So we've got two top-notch comics who are coming to Colorado in the same week. So this is Bill Burr will be at the Belco Theater on June 5th through the 6th, and Sarah Silverman will be at Comedy Works downtown on June 7th through the 9th. So it's crazy. They're not we've got those two big names coming through in that same week period. Those shows will probably sell out. So if you are interested in particularly Sarah Silverman's over at the Comedy Works space, because that's a little bit smaller.
It's a great opportunity to see her in a small space. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I would. Oh my God. Yeah. If you've truly, if you've never been to a show in Comedy Works, you've got to go, because and every comic who you talk to will tell you this, because of how the space is designed, it's just like a wall of laughter in there. You just feel it really is, and as an audience member, you feel that too. It's really contagious and infectious, and a great reason to get out and go experience some live comedy.
All right, yeah, that sounds great. And Bill Burr is so damn funny. He's kind of one of these, a little bit of a yelly comedian, but he's like outrage factory, but he's very funny, and a lot of fun to listen to. And Sarah Silverman is just she's like an American treasure. She's just such a unique personality, and so unbelievably honest and forthcoming in her comedy. It's really interesting. Her set, very, very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've never seen her comedy live. I mean, obviously I've seen some of her sets before, and she's been working since 1993 when she started on SNL. So she's been around for a while, but never seen her live. So I'm going to try to take this chance.
Yeah. And then finally, as we head into Pride Month, you had something else you wanted to mention?
Yeah, my final pick for headliner is June Teasy. It's a Pride drag cabaret over at the Denver Improv on June 5th by Ebner Page Productions. It's featuring RuPaul's Drag Race alumni Jan Sport, and features several Denver queens, including Starchild, Liza with a D, Hollywood Hills, Madam Willow. It's emceed by Chris Parenti of Channel 2's morning show Daybreak, and it's going to be a very infectious, fun way to kick off Pride Month and start it with a lot of fun. So
great. And so I was looking at, it's June TASY, so it's like June to see, like fantasy maybe. June to see Pride drag cabaret.
June to see.
I think that's my best guess. So. All right. Well, great. All kinds of great stuff coming up. And of course, if you're looking for details on any of these shows, you can find it on our calendar at onstagecolorado.com. They're pretty much all on there. So, all right. And a couple other shows that we just wanted to mention that we were kind of out to see recently. So I was at Colorado last night, which was a regional premiere of a play at Curious Theatre. And this is a show about the Flint water crisis, told through the point of view of 5 Black women who are all part of this family. And I'm still kind of mulling this one over. Toni, have you seen this yet?
I have seen it. I was there on its opening night.
Okay. So, I did. I found it kind of the pacing kind of on the slow side. So it's a 2-hour show, but it seemed longer. And there are definitely some elements that I'm still kind of chewing over about how well they worked. I mean, there's a beautiful set with it's festooned with all these water bottles. Of course, like the Flint water crisis was characterized by like only being able to kind of use bottled water, and so that was like kind of a really a visual theme that they really went after. That I thought that worked really well. Great performances from the actors and all that. I just it is not for everyone. It's definitely a heavy show, and it's got some sort of magical elements to it that I didn't always know if they added up for me or. But I don't know. What was your take on it, Toni?
I thought it was anchored by 2 really fantastic lead performances. Cheryl McCullen and Christina Fontaine, I believe.
Fontaine, yeah, she's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anchored by those 2 lead performances that I was so invested in their kind of relationship with the other characters, as well as their kind of experience dealing with the deterioration of water in their community, that I was willing to kind of go on this magical realism ride with them, which I think is a great. I guess I hadn't identified magic realism as being being a way to describe it, but I guess that it really is. I could see why it's not for everybody. I thought that the technical elements were really impressive on this one. You've already mentioned the set design, but I also thought that the lighting in particular on this production, as well as kind of the water
The use of
sound
water,
effects that are
yeah.
kind of
Real water sound
constantly
effects.
in the background. Yeah, it created this really kind of trippy auditory experience that I don't know. I guess I found I was willing. I didn't find that it felt it's 2-hour runtime, but I guess like this is like what we were talking about earlier. Why different people go to see the shows.
That's right.
Different points of views.
Yep. And then, so you mentioned you were up at Bablu to see Waiting for Godot. What'd you think of that? You said it was the first time you'd actually seen the whole production.
It was, and that one is, it's definitely, it's one thing to read Waiting for Godot. It's another thing to really see, because it's a play that basically plays out the first act and the second act are essentially the same. It's just these two characters who are waiting for Godot. So I thought that was a play that, to me, I could feel the runtime of it a little bit. The two lead performances were quite good, as well as these kind of two more comedic performances, side performances, by, I think Pazzo is his name, and his kind of servant. But yeah, and the scenic design over there was lovely. They kind of created this really interesting. They had set it at a subway station, and they had these train tracks that they created an infinity mirror. So it looked like an infinite train track that was super fitting for the existential, dreary ambiance of the show. So overall, I thought it was a really expert rendition of the French. Is it French?
Yeah.
It's existentialism, but I thought it was a really expert rendition of that. But it is also 2.5 hours, so prepare accordingly.
Okay. All right, and then so Eric Fitzgerald was out at Company at the Denver Center, so we've got that review up there. I think he was kind of like, it's okay. And did you see it as well?
I did. I sat next to Eric, or actually right in front of him.
Okay.
So over at the Denver Center. So we were talking about the musical at intermission a little bit.
And quick take on Company?
Quick take is, I think that the updated revival really, it does work, but I could definitely, it still has all the same original problems of Company, in that it is a little bit emotionally the same level throughout the entire show. I enjoy the songs a lot in Company, and I think I find a lot of the dialogue fun, so it was enough to keep me engaged. But at the end, even by the end, I kind of was like a little bit like, you know what? I could use a little bit more catharsis here. I love being alive, but it is also still just kind of the like, what are you going to do, Bobby?
All right. Well, and then another show I just mentioned, we'll have a review soon on the site, is The Prom at Town Hall Arts Center. So I think Eric was out at that one, so we'll have that one soon. And all kinds of other stuff. So for now, hold on, and we will get to my interview with Naomi Grossman here with American Horror Story coming up at the Fringe Festival. All right, well, we're here with Naomi Grossman, who's bringing her one-woman show to the Denver Fringe Festival coming up here in June, called American Horror Story. Thanks so much for being on the OnStage Colorado Podcast, Naomi.
Of course.
All right, so are you coming to us from LA somewhere? Or?
Indeed, I am.
Okay, so American Horror Story sounds familiar. It almost sounds like American Horror Story, and there's no coincidence because you were on American Horror Story. And I have to say that even though I didn't watch a lot of that show, but I did see this one, at least one of the scenes that you were in, and you were kind of a terrifying character. You were Pepper, who was kind of like a little crazy clown with kind of a shaved head, and I don't know. The character was like, I don't remember too much about the show, but I definitely remember you. So that was quite a run. You did 19 episodes between 2012 and 2018. And then you had one of the crossover characters, Samantha Crow, right?
Yes. Well, so Pepper was the first crossover character to appear in more than one season, which was unprecedented at the time, so that was exciting. But then, yes, they did indeed bring me back as a Satanist in the 8th season, which was fun too. You know, it was my real face. People were like, "Oh, so nice to see you. You know, get to play yourself." I'm like, "I just stabbed a virgin. Like, that's not me either." Okay.
Yeah. Well, when you were playing Pepper, you probably didn't have trouble with people stopping you on the street saying, "Hey, I know you from American Horror Story."
Right. There is something bittersweet about being stopped for being the ugliest person on television.
How much time did you spend in makeup every day when you were doing that character?
About 3 hours.
Wow. So did you have to show up at like 4 in the morning or something, or insane
Sometimes.
hour?
Yeah.
Yep. That's hard work, just sitting there having that being turned ugly. So
I mean, you know, is it though? I mean, how many people get to clock in, put on a robe, lay back, close your eyes, shut up for the first 3 hours, like literally do nothing,
right.
you know, take a
Yeah.
nap the first 3 hours of your shift? Not bad.
Yeah. So definitely the opposite of a glamour role there in Hollywood. Yeah. So you know, that experience. What led you to that point? What kind of acting were you doing up until you were cast in American Horror Story?
Oh boy. It's interesting. I could not have planned this trajectory. I mean, I tried, but you know, the universe had other
Right.
plans. I'm actually originally from Denver.
Uh huh.
I grew up in, you know, south suburbs of Parker, which is
Okay.
now just an extension of Aurora. It's like all just it was like farmland then, but now it
Yeah.
just keeps going. Anyway, you know, I got involved with the theater and film and television scene there while I was there. You know, there wasn't a ton, but what there was, I did. And so I used to perform every Saturday morning at the Comedy Works there in Denver with the Children's Theater Company,
Okay.
and eventually got involved, did, you know, regional commercials and Father Dowling mysteries and pretty much anything there was to come out of, you know, Colorado at the time. Got my SAG card on my 15th birthday, which was great, except that, you know, there wasn't a ton of union work. So I kind of, you know, that sort of took me out for a little bit. But that's okay. I needed to be out. I needed to go to college at Northwestern and, you know, do that. But I was, you know, ready to hit the Hollywood Walk of Fame running when I was able to, you know, make my way to LA. Um, and yeah, I say that, and yet I literally found myself just in a dead halt for quite a while. And that's what actually a lot of the show is about. It's really my history of hustling,
Uh
from the odd jobs I've had to my even odder love life. You know, it's let's face it, while I may have gotten that SAG card at 15, I was 37 before, you know, Pepper came to be. So that, you know, that was a long, hard 22 years between where I was I mean, don't get me wrong, I wasn't like waiting for Ryan Murphy to knock on my door, but I struggled. And you know, like I said, you'll see that that's what the show's all about. But you know, to answer your question, what was I doing all those 22 years? I actually always thought that this business is so difficult. You really kind of have to find your niche, you know, get a gimmick and just do that.
Right.
And so I figured that, you know, comedy was my thing. I've always loved SNL. You know, I've always looked up to Lily Tomlin and Carol Burnett and Gilda Radner and Tracy Ullman. These are my touchstones. So I found myself at the Groundlings Theater, which is kind of a, you know, the SNL factory of
Right.
Hollywood. And I got very far there. I was in the Sunday Company, which is kind of the highest rung of the cult. And
Uh
you know, I did a, you know, just that was my life, like doing kind of really big over the top characters in the confines of a 2 to 5 minute sketch sort of um scenario. You know, it's funny. So I here I oh I'd really never done drama. And here I get this audition for American Horror Story. I mean, I say that, and yet I've been corrected by friends from theater school with me who said, "What do you mean you never did drama? I did 4 years of, Ibsen and Chekhov with you. We did tons of drama." But the fact is, I had, like I said, really I'd put all my eggs in this, sketch comedy basket. And so this was the first time I had a role, or even an audition for that matter, with some real pathos, with like, and so it's interesting, here I sort of made my way as this over the top character comedian. And then I find myself in this role, this breakout role as a kind of over the top character dramatist.
Uh-huh.
So it's not to say that Pepper doesn't have her, comedic moments. Certainly. I mean, if anything, I remember the producers stopping me saying, "Oh my God, you're hilarious in tonight's episode." And of course I was like, "Thank you." Like, it's not a comedy. And in fact, there are a million little moments that I can think of where they cut, my bits, because it wasn't in tone with the show. Like, the show it's kind of a dark drama. And I remember moments that the crew was busting up laughing, like, no, and they just, unfortunately couldn't use, because it just wasn't that kind of show. But it was also kind of enlightening for me to find out, like, I had been limiting myself. I sort of decided what I was, and like I said, kind of the universe had other plans.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. Well, let's go ahead and talk about that. Where your solo show comes from, sort of the exact polar opposite of being on a big Hollywood set and all of that. It's just you on stage. So, where did the idea for American Horror Story come from?
Well, I'd done 2 solo shows prior. Like I said, in those 22 years, I had to fill it somehow. And like I said, I
Okay.
was hustling. I was doing whatever I had to do to, get noticed. And not just noticed. I mean, although that is the horror, there's the horror right there. She peeked out. But no, I mean, like I said, Hollywood can be soul crushing. And so you really, there was the first several years I found myself just, going to the post office every day with a stack of headshots sending to casting. And 3 years in or so, I thought, gee whiz, this is not what I signed up for. This is not what I want to be when I grow up. I'm a professional mailer, not actor. So
Hmm.
that's when I realized, okay, if I want to act, I'm gonna have to cast myself. And that's when I created my first solo show, which is called Girl in Argentine Landscape. It sort of chronicles my metamorphosis from big dork to badass.
Yeah,
I don't know if I can swear on here, but
you can.
okay. In any case, I did take from Denver. I took a little detour between there and college to Argentina. I was an exchange student there, and this story is that year of my life. So I wrote that, and it was incredibly fulfilling. I all of a sudden thought, this is it. This is what I was validating. I realized this is what I do want to be when I grow up, after all. Not a mailer, an actor. I just have to find ways to act. And
Hmm.
so yeah, the solo shows, that's where that was born of. I would say that first one was in 2002. And then about 7 years later, I had the itch for another. And in 2009, I created my second solo show called Carnival Knowledge, Love, Lust, and Other Human Oddities,
Okay.
which is sort of a kind of a romp. It's, madcap adventures, misadventures, I should say, dating in Los Angeles, which at that point I had quite a lot of experience in. It's, obviously well, I was going to say more mature show, although it's probably more immature than anything. But the first show was obviously like a a sweet coming of age story, and this was more, come of age. It opens with me on a carnival midway, which is of course a metaphor for the dating scene in LA. I'm playing a vigorous game of whack-a-weenie, which you may be familiar with if you've ever been to a carnival and seen a whack-a-mole. They're quite similar, although a little more phallic.
Okay.
Anyway, that was that show. And again, it was one of those incredibly fulfilling, validating things for me. Same deal. I got rave reviews, twice extended, sold out runs. It went on from LA to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in Scotland, and then a transfer to the London's West End, and even
Wow, awesome.
went to New York. So, and actually, for that matter, I've taken it around to universities nationwide. So it's just one of those. Solo shows are my thing. I found my way into it. It was, again, sort of born out of my own desperation, wanting to just work. But it's really been it's a genre that I really excel at and enjoy.
Right.
This third show, again, it's always sort of when I'm like rock bottom, I'm like, okay, now what? And it was COVID, and I was tearing my hair out. I'm an extreme extrovert with a very active social schedule, and having nowhere to go and no one to talk to, I just started talking to myself and let my fingers do the typing. And 9 months later, a show was born.
That's great.
It's
A
nice.
lot of good stuff came out of COVID, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was a rough time, but really, this may not have happened otherwise. So
Right. So, what can people expect if they go to see American Horror Story at the Denver Fringe Festival? So, you mentioned that it's got some things to do about the odd jobs and hustles that you've done, as well as some of your interesting dating stories. What people expect?
Well, I go to these Comic-Cons regularly, and we sit on panels and answer, audience questions. And this is going to be well, it is edited, obviously, but the, like unedited, everything you wanted to know about American Horror Story, about Naomi Grossman, about the face underneath all that all those prosthetics. I think it's a real love letter to AHS fans. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for them. So I'm giving back. It's like I said, I think it's very relatable, which is sort of surprising. I mean, because let's face it, I've had some adventures that and yet you're gonna find like it's a story that like we've all been there. We've all compromised. We've all fallen in love with the wrong person. We've all taken a job that was maybe didn't feel right. I think it's a story, like I said, that is extremely relatable and it's very vulnerable. That's another thing that people always come away with is, wow, you just like put it all out there. And that's true. I'm an open book, and I think it's a fun insider's look into the idea of overnight success, because people say where'd she come from, like as if I came out as Pepper and
Right.
as if I'd been under a rock. Oh no, I've been working. I've been at it for those 22 years.
Yeah. That's a lot of people say that. It's like, yeah, I did not come out of nowhere. So I've been at this for a long time. And like many actors, they've definitely paid their dues and taken their lumps over the years. So,
Right.
but you also, you had another, I guess it was a web series called Control Alt Delete, where you were nominated for an Emmy in 2018. So that was set in a women's health clinic. What was that experience like?
Um, that was a web series that some friends of mine from college created, and I really just wanted to support their vision. I thought it was it's a kind of pro-choice agenda, and I thought that's important. I think I love the idea of sort of masking agendas with comedy. So there was kind of an interesting political uh, uh, um, satire aspect to that. And let's face it, comedy's everywhere, tragedy's everywhere. And so why not in a health clinic, a women's health clinic?
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, just the
Mhm.
way Cheers is hilarious at a bar, like, why isn't Control Alt Delete hilarious in an abortion clinic, right? I mean, hilarity ensues everywhere.
It does, yeah. Humor often covers over a lot of grimmer things. That's what people use as a mechanism to cope with.
Well, and I
things.
think that's what you're gonna find in this show as well. I think it's so funny the feedback I get. I mean, there's some reviews that are, side splitting, like I almost died laughing. And then if you ask my mom, she'll say, "Oh, it's heartbreaking."
Uh-huh.
It's tragic. It's so sad. And
Yeah.
so I love that, quite honestly. My favorite moments are the moments where people are just can't stop laughing, and then all of a sudden record scratch comes to a
Uh-huh.
screeching halt, and
You drop a bomb
not a
on
beat. That's my favorite, or a gasp, or a no. Those are my favorite
them.
moments.
All right. Well, that's great. So, well, hopefully, where you are now isn't going to turn into yet another solo show that's really sad. Hopefully, it sounds like you're in a good place.
I
It sounds
am in
like.
a good place. I mean, but at least I've found a way of coping, right? I mean, there's worse addictions than writing one woman shows.
Yeah.
I found a good way to. I mean, I do feel like uh, I often will find myself in a situation, and I know, I could say the right thing and make the situation go away, or I could, go the other way, say something slightly incendiary, and just see what happens. And I'm not gonna lie, I will sometimes go that wrong direction just to see how the story goes. I really am a raconteur at heart. If I love, you know, I I'm always like I want to see. I guess I am my own muse, is what I'm trying to say, and that if given the choice between a boring life and a great story at a cocktail party, I would, or I shouldn't say boring life, I should say like nice stable life,
Right.
and an exciting one that is gonna, regale cocktail guests, I will always choose the latter.
All right. That sounds like a good place to be. So, Naomi Grossman will be performing her solo show at the Bug Theater on Navajo Street in Denver as part of the Denver Fringe Festival. And shows are June 6th at 8:30 p.m. and June 9th at 6:30 p.m. So, Naomi Grossman, thanks so much for coming on. And we're looking forward to, lots of people looking forward to getting out Fringe Festival. So, you should have a good crowd.
Oh, I'm so thrilled. It's time I came home, so I'm excited. There's going to be some familiar Colorado faces, not just in the audience, of course, but on the projection screen. So
Uh,
if you know me from that time in my life, especially, you'll want to come and see. Make sure your face isn't up there.
all right. Okay. Naomi, thanks so much again.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that's it for this week's episode of the OnStage Colorado Podcast. I'm Alex Miller here with Toni Tresca. Thanks so much to Naomi Grossman for spending time with us. So really enjoyed talking to her. Look forward to seeing that show. I think it'll be one of the highlights of Fringe. So, and we'll be back in with another interview with another Fringer in advance of Denver Fringe Festival coming up June 6th through 9th. So Jack Dawkins is a Denver-based rapper, poet, and storyteller. And his one-man show Integration will be at Fringe June 6th and 9th. And this one has the theme of ayahuasca experiences. So Toni, you're making gestures like you know about Jack Dawkins.
I do. I actually interviewed him last November, so November 2023 for Westward, because this immersive performance is in conjunction with the release of his debut rap album, and it's also called Integration. And so I actually got to see this performance at the Dairy Center on this last December 11th. And so it is actually an incredible story. So it's based off of his trip to Costa Rica, where he had a psychedelic trip of self-discovery. And so he kind of uses this album that talks about his experience tripping and what he learned on there to kind of tell his story through a mix of projections that are on the back screen, little bits of video, and then live performances of the rap pieces in front of you. So it's a really trippy experience that seeks to kind of mirror the experience of also going on an ayahuasca trip yourself. So
all right.
I found it very engaging. So I am very curious to hear your conversation with Jack next week, because I know from my talking with him that he's a very, very charismatic and interesting dude.
Great. All right. Well, you got me really keen to talk to him. So, all right. So, well, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the OnStage Colorado podcast, wherever you get your stuff, and give us a star or a review or something like that. If you're enjoying this program, and let the other theater lovers in your life know about us, and be sure to check out all of the reviews, news, other podcast episodes, and our full statewide theater calendar on the website at onstagecolorado.com. I'm Alex Miller.
And I'm Toni Tresca. And we'll see you at the show.
Yep, we'll be out there.